I want to welcome everybody to this morning's presentation. Let's open with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for the way you have led the movement. Thank you for the way you have led each of us here. As individuals with all our various backgrounds and testimonies. Please bless us now as we study together. We give you all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. I want to start off with some review. And the first thing I want to talk about is the 3 models of 2017. Okay, continue? Okay. So the 3 models of 2017. As I understand it, these were developed over maybe 2016 and 2017. And we had 3 independent stories that were lined up together. And what were those 3 different stories? So one of them was the line of agriculture. Matthew 13, the parable of wheat and tares. We get our ploughing, early rain, latter rain and harvest. We understand where the seed was planted and the lifetime of the plant. And the ploughing that has to happen before that seed is planted. And this is placed on the structure, on the line. Added to that, we have a completely different story. The 7 steps of salvation. And this is also placed on the same line and connected with the line of agriculture. As an example, we have sanctification. Which lines up with the lifetime of the plant. Because sanctification is the work of a lifetime. The 3rd model, Revelation 14. The 3 angels' messages. When they arrive, when they're empowered, have been connected to the other 2 models. So they're brought together, but they're all quite different. And because this is the case, and it's been investigated thoroughly, we have confidence in them, and then we're able to use them. The next thing I want to talk about is the structures that we use. So what kinds of structures do we have at our disposal? One of the structures that might come to mind straight away we have a reform line. It has 5 waymarks. The 4 dispensations that I mentioned earlier. And then in between each of those major waymarks, we have 2 minor waymarks. These are structures that we have developed over time. It has stood the test of time so far. And it makes it possible for us to make applications of things. We also understand about fractals. And this is another way that we can examine prophecy and understand the times in which we live. I spoke about the 2 minor waymarks. And now we have the model of Boston, Concord and Exeter test. Which is similar, but it gives us a little bit more help as well. We use alpha and omega, so we know that the end and the beginning often look the same. But we also have progression, so it can look different. We have failure, success. We have chiasms that we can use. And then we have something that I'm going to refer to as the 2 parts. So I'm going to write in 2 parts, and I want us to look at that one. So I wonder if your minds are thinking what I mean by 2 parts. Maybe things immediately come to your mind. So for me, when I think of 2 parts, I'm thinking about things like the rain. The 2 parts of rain are early rain and latter rain. What about the growth of the plant? Does that come in 2 parts? So I think it does. During the early rain, we see the plant growing. It starts small and gets big. And we understand that during the latter rain, the plant has to be ready in time for that. And then the fruit will grow. And fruit, it starts small and it gets big. What about angels? Does that come in 2 parts? Yes, it does. First, the angel is flying in the midst of heaven. And then it comes down to the earth. Or we could use the words arrival and empowerment. Another one is judgment of the living. Most of us would have studied the vows and hopefully understand that the judgment of the living happens in 2 steps. There is a period of record taking. And then a time of investigation. And none of this is new. Now, the 2 parts that I've just spoken about, these 4 examples, were really important for us to prove 2001. It explained vows 21 and 24 better. Once we understood how we could take what Ellen White had said about things like early and latter rain, and then see that we could apply it to our own line in a different way. We needed to find that waymark and prove that. The waymark of 2001. I think we all know that 9T11 wasn't enough to prove that waymark. So in 2019, these were explained to us in more detail. So why is 9/11 so important to us? All right, so it is actually the beginning of this period of rain. The beginning of the judgment of the living. And other things too. It has been said that 9/11 is probably the most important waymark in our reform line. This was hidden treasure. We didn't get this from Ellen White. It's a harbinger of close of probation, which is very important. It has been taught that you can't be tested until you're alive. Baptism is marked at 2001. So testing begins at 2001. Other features of 9/11. The first angel's message was empowered. 9/11 or 2001 was confirmation of our line upon line methodology. We could see history repeating. We now had 1989 and 2001 9/11. Which was repeating 1798 and August 11, 1840. It was our second witness that we are the final generation. At 2001, the third woe began, and the four winds were restrained. The tarrying time began. The sealing process began. The FGA conference leadership was passed by. God entered into covenant with their people. In the construction model, the foundations began to be laid. And we had the unsealing of our message of time. The 2520 started to open up to us from 2001. And there could be even more things that I haven't mentioned. But let's not forget how important that waymark is. So many important things started at that time. Next, I just want us to review some of these different things I've mentioned. And I just want to line up those two phases for us. Now, I want to really focus on this certain period of our line. The middle section, where the rain is. So it's from 2001 to close of probation. And in the middle we have Sunday law, or national Sunday law. So rain is early rain and latter rain. Sunday law is the point where it changes from one to the other. So it must be important, right? We know the rain would end at close of probation because we wouldn't have rain during the harvest time. We can see that it's, in one sense, it's all one story about rain. But in another sense, there's two stories. Part one, the early rain, and part two, the latter rain story. As I mentioned about the plant, it has the first part about the plant itself. And then the second part, that the fruit grows. From the parable of Matthew 13. It's not really fruit like an apple. We're talking about grain and wheat. So we'll look at that a bit later. The next one I wanted to talk about, just to put them on here as well for you, is the angels. And we said it was flying and on earth. And in particular, for this dispensation, the second and third angels. Now, these two stories about the angels, the second and third angels, the second angel's message lines up with the period of sanctification. It's instruction in righteousness. So it lines up with the lifetime of the plant. First you have to be born spiritually, and then you'll be harvested at close of probation. So that's where that second angel's message fits. The third angel's message was put into this context by taking what Ellen White had said about the third angel's message and essentially making like a fractal of it. So both of these angels arrive at 9/11. Both are empowered at Sunday law. Both are empowered at Sunday law. And they both finish at close of probation. So we can see that both of these are running in parallel from start to finish. If anybody wants to review some of this material, I would direct you to presentations by Elder Paminda. Some in 2019. Also Germany in January 2020. You could even look for any mention of vows 21 and 24. And you should find some materials that you could check. So I'm continuing on the basis that nothing has changed since then. Just as no rain is required when the plant's lifetime has ended, so the angel's messages end when probation is closed. But we know that our models are simple. Real life is complicated. But we have to have simple models so that we can line things up and work with them. So that's just to say that when it comes to close of probation, it may not be as cut and dried. It may not be as straight, may not be as simple as what I've described. What about the great controversy? There's Sunday laws in that story. We have used these great controversy models to build our line in the first place, even though now we understand that it doesn't look like that today. And even back then, it would have looked rather different. However, in that story of great controversy, there's one Sunday law story but it has two parts, in my opinion. The story goes that Protestants would have a desire to engage the state power of the United States and bring in a national Sunday law. That seems like part one to me. And that would bring us to our middle way mark. And the story continues that this would spread country by country until all of Christendom has done the same. We understand in our dispensation we're in a global world now. Which is why worldwide Sunday law has been marked on our line. Or universal Sunday law. And this has been placed at close of probation waymark. And to me that looks like a phase 2 of this story. It is all one story about a Sunday law right from the beginning. But I'm seeing 2 phases. Part 1 is national. Part 2 is global. It goes small to big, and then small to big. Okay. All right, now judgment of the living. This was something that methodology uncovered. We say that judgment of the living began at 9/11. And this has been taught as the record-taking phase. So judgment of the living has 2 phases. And this is how it was explained. When it comes to the judgment of the dead, people's records were taken during their lifetime. And then it was investigated after they died. But those that don't die before the second advent, they can't go through an investigation after death. But to investigate a person's life requires investigation of a record of that life. And when does their life begin? At 9/11. So record taking can't happen before that. And then once we get to the Sunday law, we can then understand the investigative judgment of the living, which is something that was already understood by Adventists. So this is the same pattern. We have 2 phases. It goes from 2001 to close of probation. And Sunday law is midway. Okay, so just to sum up that point, we have these various models fitting into this specific part of our line. We get progression across the whole thing. We get repetition in a way, because it goes small to big and small to big. And in the middle, it's a turning point. It changes. Something changes. Now I want to look at the same section of the line, but for the line of the priests. And I wonder if people remember that this was also called out as a special section. Special section. We have a fractal version of the rain. So when we were on the line of the priests, we did call it early rain and latter rain on that line as well. So what's the beginning of the rain on the line of the priests? It's the same. It's 2001. And when did the rain end on the line of the priest? It was close of probation, which was 2019. And the middle way mark? Sunday law? 2014. Okay, so Elder Tess identified this section in particular in her midway study. It's midway study, why? It's focusing on this middle one. That's the midway point, or it's a turning point. We understand that we can line up some dates from Millerite history with these waymarks. For 2001, we have April 19. And at the waymark for 2014, that's July 21. Our close of probation 2019 lines up with October 22. And July 21 has been known as midnight. It sits in the middle of these two other waymarks. 93 days and 93 days. What does midnight mean? It's that point in the night time. We've reached the turning point. It's the darkest of night. But it sits in the middle of daytime, sunset, and then sunrise and daytime. So we can see that this is a turning point. And for them, at that time, it was important for them to start receiving light again out of the darkness. It's a bit like a chiasm. Goes dark and then bright again. Now 2014 is also right in the middle. It's 5 years on either side. So something special happened in 2014. To understand that a little bit more, Elder Tess took us back to some history. And this diagram may come to your remembrance. She marked 2014 over here with its midway, and it had 5 on either side. It helped us to understand 2019 would be our close of probation. Then, part of that study was to take prophetic numbers and she took us back to other events in history. We had the Reformation. Another one was the French Revolution. The American Civil War. And 1888 history. And when we went back to those dates, she showed us that each of those happened to land right in the middle of some kind of turmoil or event. And each of those was a midway. In these stories, I'll just remind us of a few of them. There was the first half, so the part 1. Part 1 was some kind of progress was made. And then it was followed by a backlash. So, for example, with the Reformation, the first half was about the peasants and their efforts. There was a turning point in 1524. An event happened, a significant one. And this was followed by a backlash by the aristocrats. With the French Revolution, part 1 was the Reign of Terror. The turning point was 1794. Something happened. And then there was a backlash in the Red Terror. The Civil War, American one. Part 1 is the Confederates making progress. Something important happened in the middle, which is 1863. And then the northern states start winning. So for each of these, there is one story from 2001 to close of probation. But there's also 2 stories tucked in there. And because it's a turning point where things seem to go forward and then in reverse, it's a bit like a mirror. It's a bit like a chiasm. You kind of end up where you started, but not exactly, because it's also a line of progression. So we understood that for our line of the priests, we were in the middle of some kind of a revolution. From 2001 to 2014, there was some kind of progress being made. Something happened in 2014 that changed it. And then there was some kind of a backlash or reversing from 2014 to close of probation. So whether we're looking at the line of the 144,000 or the line of the priests, (2001) to close of probation seems to be where we see a certain story. Where something starts and ends. There's always a midway point that divides the story into 2 sections. That midway point changes something in the story. Okay, so I want to now look at our structure of Boston, Concord, Exeter test. So, as we've spoken about, there are those 2 minor waymarks that sit in the middle of the 2 major ones. We have called them increase of knowledge and formalisation. But we've also been using Boston, Concord and Exeter as well for those 4 waymarks. I'm going to use shut door for the last one because the word test can be understood different ways. Elder Tess helped us to see that this Boston, Concord and Exeter pattern wasn't restrained to a single dispensation, but we would find it in all of them. And these days we have a range of features that we think each of these have. For example, when we're at an Exeter waymark, we might see something to do with someone crying out, or something to do with time, or something formalised. It's good to be aware that when we are doing this, we're getting features from different stories. For example, the idea of an increase of knowledge or formalisation is something we get from the story of William Miller. This doesn't come from the story of Samuel Snow. When Samuel Snow was at Boston, Concord and Exeter, he was delivering his message at 3 different places, which is different to what Miller experienced with his increase of knowledge and formalisation. Miller had an increase of knowledge about prophecy. Then he got credentials and his message was formalised. We often think that there will be symbols of a death decree at Concord. But we don't get death decree from Samuel Snow's story. And we don't get death decree from the increase of knowledge of William Miller. In those stories, we didn't see anyone dying or being ordered to death. So this feature we get from the Great Controversy. My point is that when we look in a story for Boston or Concord or Exeter, we need to remember that each of these have certain characteristics. But when we list all the features that would sit, say, with a Concord, we've pulled them together from all kinds of various sources. And each of those have their original context. What seems to be common among all of them, when we're looking at Miller, Snow, or the Great Controversy, is that at that Boston waymark, something begins, say a message or an experience. It seems to start small and then escalate to a climax. The other thing that we have to keep in mind with the shut door is that it's a Boston for the following dispensation as well. Boston, the shut door of one dispensation will be the Boston of the next one. So when we look at that shut door waymark, there's 2 things going on at the same time. So keeping in mind that the characteristics that we are now using for Boston, Concord and Exeter and shut door because they come from different stories and different contexts, It's possible that a parable we want to apply to our line might not have every single feature for each of the waymarks. But having said that, I want to look at some characteristics that we should be on the lookout for. Things that have been collected from Snow and Miller and Great Controversy. At the Boston waymark, as I said before, it seems to be when something arrives, unseen. At Concord, we might see things such as people coming together in agreement, because the word Concord means that. And we've seen examples of that in Great Controversy, for example. We might see two groups beginning to form. We probably see whatever arrived at Boston. Becomes visible. There could be some kind of increase of knowledge. We might see a death decree, or a death, or deaths plural. At Exeter, we could see things like something to do with time or time setting. Or the formalisation of something, like a policy or a message. We might see something to do with a cry, a loud cry, a midnight cry. There might be something that's very challenging and difficult. Like a hard message that was easier before. And we might see that two groups are more clearly identified. At the shut door, we might have a climax. And we could see two groups are separated. In a story, we might see a shut door. We might see that a time prediction has been fulfilled. And for each of these that I've mentioned, you might have thought of other characteristics as well that I didn't remember. Now I want to talk about Boston, Concord, Exeter test again, and how we see this in Matthew 13. As I mentioned before, I think that there are two phases in the lifetime of the plant. The first part is when the plant itself grows up. During the early rain. I'll put 2001. We know that the seeds are sown. and it's invisible. Then we get something visible. And it's subtle. And then we get another phase of the plant. And then at the middle way mark, the plant is grown. So in nature, well, I spoke about the growth of the fruit. In nature, what has to happen in order to get fruit? So if we just think of a fruit tree, the tree grows up, it blossoms, you have flowers. You don't have any fruit yet. What has to happen to the flowers so you can get fruit? The flowers need to be pollinated. Pollinated, the pollen fertilization of the flower. So I want to just look at this story in light of the Boston Concord Exeter model. As I mentioned, at 2001, the sower plants the seeds in the soil. And in the parable, we also have tares planted by the enemy. But the seeds aren't visible when they're planted. At the waymark that I would put at Concord, which is 2019, that's when I would say that the seed sprouts and the blade appears. It's the first green shoot that breaks through the soil. This is the first visible stage of life. It seems to fit with our understanding of what a concord is. The Exeter waymark in that early rain. It's 2021. And with wheat, there's a stage called heading. The stem of the wheat elongates, gets longer. And the ear, other word for ear is a head or a spike. It emerges from the leaf sheath, so from the leaves. Inside the ear are the flowering spikelets where the grains will form. So from one point of view, when we get to this middle waymark of Sunday law, it's the end of phase one. The plant is mature in size and structure. and it's supporting the ear. But then we're going to start again with part 2 of the story. And now we're looking at Sunday Law Waymark as a Boston. And I want to share with you how this fertilisation takes place in the wheat. Now that the plant is mature, it's time for the flowers to be pollinated. Wheat flowers are normally self-pollinating. Meaning that fertilisation happens internally within the flower. Inside a wheat floret, which is a flower, there are anthers on the stamen. Anthers on the stamen. Okay, so the stamen is the male part. And these anthers, they swell and they release the pollen grains. And the pollen grains fall directly onto some receptors above the flower's ovary. And once the pollen lands onto the receptors, the pollen grain germinates and forms a pollen tube. The tube. I'll say it simply, the pollen sprouts and it creates like a root that goes down. And this pollen tube, which is like a root that goes down, it goes into the ovule, the egg of the flower. And a male nucleus or a cell travels down the tube and goes into the female egg cell. This union forms a zygote. Together it's called a zygote. And that's what's going to develop into the wheat grain. So here we see a close similarity to the way that the plant itself began. It's like a seed is being planted within the flower. It's invisible to you, to your eye. But it will grow and become more visible and get bigger. And this is how we have that pattern of Boston, Concord, Exeter test repeating again. The next stage for the wheat is called the milk stage. And the grain is visible but subtle. The kernels begin to form and they're green. They're not very firm. It's still hard to tell the difference between wheat and tare, but you can if you try. And the next stage is called the dough stage. And the grain is larger and firmer. It's beginning to change colour now. So I'll just put more evident here, the difference between wheat and tares. But at the dough stage, it's not ready for harvest yet. You have to wait for the mature or the harvest ready stage. And now it is ready for harvest. It's very clear, it's gone brown, it's changed colour. And so I think that this is another evidence for this pattern of Boston Concord Exeter test. And this idea that we have one story between 2001 and close of probation. We see a part one and a part two. There's something significant that happens in the middle. And each of those two parts kind of follow the same pattern. So structures are really important for us. They give us security when we are examining prophetic stories. Because when a story is just a group of words and it's not structured, it makes it hard to know when things are happening or what's going on. And I believe that structures give us safety. I've laid all of this out because I want to look at a story and try to put it on a line. And I want to present it to you to consider. I'll be using Boston Concord and Exeter to do this. Also this two parts idea. The idea of a turning point. And starting and ending at those waymarks of 2001 to close of probation. So we'll start looking at that in the next presentation. If you'll bow with me, let's close in prayer. Dear Lord, I want to give you thanks for all of the work that has been done in the many years leading to this moment. For our teachers and leaders. And other people, many people, that have contributed in their own ways and with their own abilities. That gives us a good models that we can use now. I pray that you would continue to lead and guide and bless us as we continue to try to press forward with the message. And may our hearts be open to the truth. And also our discernment good so we can see where there are mistakes. Thank you for being our God who loves us. In Jesus' name. Amen.